Welcome to The Faithful Steward. This is a podcast all about sharing biblical wisdom and practical insights in order to help church leaders pursue and teach financial freedom as part of Christian discipleship. We believe this is a spiritual conversation, and this is a place where the church needs to lead the way in order to move our communities forward in how we steward God's resources. I'm your host, James Lenhoff, and I am so passionate about this conversation and helping leaders have the confidence to step into it. We believe that if we help people thrive financially and grow spiritually, it changes everything. And I am so excited to join you on this journey. This podcast is brought to you by Good Sense. If you'd like more information about what we're up to, you can go to our website at goodsensemovement.org. All right, let's get started with today's conversation. Well, here we are in the fall. It's officially fall. The leaves are turning. Pumpkin spice is everywhere. Oh my goodness, the pumpkin spice thing, man, it's incredible. Everything is pumpkin spice right now. We are starting to get into that sense of the holiday season. Everything is turning. The kids have been back in school. We're getting back into routine. And so this fall, as we settle in to being more frequently in the house, more cozy, more still, this is a great time to start to plan for the balance of the year. It's a great opportunity in the calendar to do a check-in. And we talked about these rhythms of checking in one of our podcasts recently, this idea of having some scheduled opportunities to look back at your reality, to see how you've done against what you thought you would do, and prepare for what changes need to be made ahead of time as we turn into the next season. And so this is a great opportunity to do just that. And I want to walk us through what we should be looking for. What are the things we want to be paying attention to, and how do we adjust in a way that actually impacts how we end this year? And the first thing we want to talk about is just evaluating how we did in the summer. Summer can be a time of chaos. Kids are off routine. We're doing trips and vacations. We're telling ourselves, what the heck, let's spend the money. We end up overspending a lot of times in summer because everything feels chaotic. We tend to eat out more. I notice, at least in my family, we're doing much more of a restaurant run because we are coming in late from something that we, crammed in from the day, and we're not really in a rhythm that allows for planning groceries well, planning our meals well. We end up kind of subsidizing that with quick runs to a restaurant, and we order a lot more pizza. This summer is just that kind of mess, and we need to evaluate what that meant, what it did. We don't need to judge ourselves. We don't need to beat ourselves up, but we do need to face the reality of what we overspent. And so if you did take vacations this summer, if you spent on activities and adventures and all the shared experiences, congratulations. That's beautiful. That is not something we want to avoid doing. At the same time, we do want to be intentional about evaluating what we used in order to pay for those things. If we overspent on vacations, did that go on a credit card? Did we back off on our savings? Did we adjust things in a way that we need to go back in the other direction? We need to now adjust our spending to make sure we pay that credit card debt off. Or maybe we need to kick our 401k back on if we stopped saving in order to adjust for some of the spending we were doing in the summer. This is the time to reset some of those things and get those habits back. What I have found, and maybe you can relate, is that the fall is a time where routines come back in and habits start to come back more naturally. We find ourselves, because we're getting up early with the kids, able to get more engaged in our workout routine or in taking walks or being more engaged with our physical and mental health, because we're back into a rhythm of daily life where the kids are going to bed at a reasonable time, they're getting up early, and so we fall back into those rhythms as well. This is also a great time where spending can be reined in because we're just not doing as much stuff. The weather doesn't support those things as much. And so when we see what we have overspent, we can make adjustments now in October before we get to November and December, and the holiday season churns us back up and we have another round of potential overspending. And so take an honest look at what your reality was as you came through that season, and make sure that we have tested our spending for the year to date against our spending plan. If we thought we were going to spend $5,000 on adventure and travel and we spent $7,000, we need to make sure we account for that in the spending plan going forward. And what we don't want to do is make those adjustments right as we get to the end of the year, where we are cutting things aggressively and reacting to the emotion of fear because we find out too late that we are way over our spending plan. I find a lot of times families cruise through this season without being intentional. And then when the holiday season comes in, they're met with this really difficult tension of being pulled towards overspending and facing the reality of what they have already overspent. And they find themselves in deep anxiety and panic, and they overreact in this really harsh austerity. They basically go to the far extreme of spending nothing in a season when there is so much pull to spend more. And that is such an uncomfortable tension to live in. Now is a great time to actually make those adjustments and prepare yourself, prepare your kids, prepare the rest of your family for what those decisions mean when we're not really close to the holidays and everybody's getting excited about Christmas. We can have conversations and prepare them. Hey, just so you know, because we overspent on vacation and adventure and fun this summer, and we ate out a lot and we did all the great things and we loved it and we all enjoyed it, now there's going to be a consequence of, come Christmas time, there's going to be a little bit less that we're going to have to celebrate together. And I just want to tell you that now in October, when you're not all spun up in the Christmas season, it's a terrible time to tell your kids that Christmas is going to be smaller when Christmas music is playing, right? It's a whole lot easier to prepare your family, including your extended family, if there's an expectation of gift giving and what should happen at Christmas time because of tradition. Now is a time to have those conversations honestly before everyone is emotionally tied to those traditions. You may have also had a major change in summer. Summer is typically when people make moves, for example. They may have changed where they're living. You bought a house, you moved to a different apartment, and you did all that in the summer because you wanted to be outside of the school year, for example. Well, now is a great time to reset your spending plan because you've had maybe a few months worth of experience of that new mortgage payment, that new rent payment, the new utility bills. Now is a really, really important time to reframe your spending plan based on that experience that you've had for a few months. And so use this time wisely before you're emotionally charged in the holiday season. Fall is also a time where we're going to see a big uptick in spending on things like clothing and school items, right? As the kids got ramped back up, I'm sure there was I don't know if you're anything like my family, we got to buy shoes because they all outgrew their shoes over the summer and we got to get new shoes for the school year. And so there's just this big spike in that spending. Some of those things are not going to repeat themselves, but we do need to accordingly plan for what does need to be reduced in order to account for that spike that maybe we didn't plan for adequately, or maybe we've added on because there's a big uptick. Maybe there's new activities that the kids are involved in, new extracurriculars that take more cost, and all of that hit at the front end of the school year, and we weren't ready for those expenses. What are those things that have changed and hit unexpectedly? We need to make sure we mathematically account for that. If that means we need to spend $200 a month less over these next 3 months, we can do that. We can make that happen. But if we don't make those changes now, we end up in a situation where come December, we need to cut drastically in order to land in this spending plan that we intentionally set out for at the beginning of the year, right? If you don't make some of the trajectory changes when you still have time, then the level of austerity, the level of change that you need to absorb at the very last minute is really, really hard to absorb. And so we end up overspending and then maintaining that overspending. This is the window where we can actually make changes that aren't as painful if we do them for the rest of the year each month. So let's say that we evaluate those things. We look honestly without judgment at what's happened so far, and we translate that into what it means for the rest of the year, and we realize we can't pull this off. We've realized that we are way over our skis. We've overspent to a level that we can't fix in the last 3 months of the year. If that's the case, one of the most important things we need to do is not move into this sense of self-loathing and judgment. We need to just recognize the truth without beating ourselves up, telling ourselves we're terrible at this, we stink at our finances. That kind of self-talk can be really destructive. It's really demotivating. You start to just give up. And if we overspent and we have not hit the target this year, we don't want to respond to that news by giving up and quitting. That is not going to help anybody. And so what we really want to start with is just grace more than anything. That doesn't mean we give ourselves permission to perpetually overspend, but we do need to recognize that this is a really critical moment. If we approach this news of having overspent with judgment and self-loathing, we will actually defeat the purpose of planning, because we won't want to plan because we know we're just going to fail and we're going to beat ourselves up again. The real work that needs to be done is understanding what happened. And if we beat ourselves up, we'll just say, I'm too stupid to do this, I'm too incapable, and we won't actually do the work. If we tell ourselves, I can figure this out, I actually have what it takes, I can pull this off, I can honor God with his resources, I just need to pay better attention, I need to look at the details, I need to understand how we got here. The work is figuring out what were the reasons that led to the overspending. Was it just lack of attention to detail, lack of self-restraint? Were there big medical bills or big changes that hit that really blew up our spending that we had no control over? Those are very different reasons to be where we are. And if we just immediately respond with judgment and self-loathing, we won't actually seek to understand so that we can do better next year. We want to approach this truth with an openness. We want to learn from it. We want to grow in it. We don't want to dismiss our own ability and destroy our motivation to try again. And the next step is to then reframe what this last 3 months of the year should look like. Maybe we won't be able to hit our spending plan goals. Maybe we won't actually come in the way we intended to. But what can we do? What progress can we make in these last few months? And what sacrifice does it take to get there? We want to think intentionally, communicate clearly with our families to be able to say, hey, this is what we're going to have to do. And we're not going to be able to pay all this credit card debt off this quarter. It's just too far out of our reach. But I do really want to see our credit card debt go down by $2,000 by the end of the year, let's say. Give yourself a target that is attainable and start proving to yourself that you're actually capable of making progress, because it will be the encouragement you need to do the work of planning next year for a better outcome. This is also a time where we want to start really noting what we did. If we find that we overspent on vacation, that means next year we probably want to plan for a bigger spend on vacation if that's going to happen every year, and we need to then adjust the rest of our spending accordingly. So we don't want to throw out what we've learned. We want to make sure that we carry those things into the following year so that 2025 is set up to be successful. What we learn from this is so valuable. And so often we want to just beat ourselves up and tell ourselves we're no good at this. But if we can approach this with openness, we actually start to get better and better incrementally as the years go on, because we understand what's happening. What are the triggers that are causing overspending, and how do we get ahead of them? What are the unexpected things that maybe we should start expecting? Those are the things we want to start getting better at, and those take practice. They take examination. They take reflection and contemplation in order to really grow in our wisdom and how to honor God with his resources. This is not something that comes naturally. What comes naturally is selfishness and self-indulgence. That is naturally what we want to do. The work is fighting against those things in order to be faithful stewards with resources that aren't ours and managing them with intention, being proactive, making decisions ahead of time, and then acting out of those decisions rather than acting out of our emotion in the moment. These are all things we can learn if we take the time to do the reflection, to look back, to seek to understand, and then plan ahead accordingly based on what we've learned. This is what faithful stewardship looks like. It is a journey. It is a process of growth, of learning, of doing things differently when we understand how we've done them in the past. And so it takes this work to continue that journey and to grow in our faithful stewardship. Well, thank you so much for listening to the Faithful Steward podcast. Be sure to check out the show notes for links and other information that we mentioned in today's episode. Also, be sure to check out our website at goodsensemovement.org to get all the resources we offer churches to help equip them in teaching financial stewardship to their community. If you have any questions or any topics you want to make sure we cover on our show, you can email me at jameslenhoff@goodsensemovement.org. I'd love to hear from you. I hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you next week.